You're listening to The Foundation of Wellness, a refreshing take on diet and lifestyle, with Jessica Dogert, a registered dietitian nutritionist, and Marisa Moon, a primal health coach.
Hey you guys, my name is Jessica and I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, and you can learn all about me at jessicadogert.com.
What is up, everybody? This is Marisa Moon. I'm a certified primal health coach. You can learn more about me at marisamoon.com and see my recipes on mylongevitykitchen.com.
Okay, so this is episode 29 and it's all about dairy. It's part 1 of 2 because this is a topic with so many different important subtopics to cover. So as a dietitian, I get this question all the time. What's the deal with dairy? Is it good for you or is it bad for you? So Marisa and I are here to set the record straight.
We are going to share with you some of our own experiences with dairy, also what the research says, what we teach our coaching clients, and which dairy myths that you should know about. But next week, we're going to get even more specific regarding different dairy allergies and sensitivities and intolerances. What's the difference there? We've just got a ton of insider tips for you today and next week.
So do you guys remember the Got Milk campaign when 300 plus celebrities like Britney Spears and Kate Moss, for example, wore milk mustaches to remind us how important it was to drink up?
Oh, for sure. How could we forget, right? Or maybe you've heard the slogan, milk, it does a body good. Well, both of those campaigns were a result of this aggressive lobbying or money-backed legal persuasion by the dairy industry starting in the 80s. And all of that persuasion was rewarded when Congress obliged, and they started and funded all these different dairy research and marketing groups and foundations. Today, dairy is still one of the most influential food lobbies on Capitol Hill, and one in particular is known as the National Dairy Council. That's who's behind all of those ads. And this is one of the reasons that our U.S. dietary guidelines can't be trusted. Sorry, guys, but it's true. Because this government panel of experts creating our guidelines, deciding what Americans should eat, is often filled with these individuals that have financial ties to all different industries, like the dairy industry in this case. And they're even manipulating the science and those nutrition studies, and they're trying to associate health benefits with drinking milk in whatever way they can, even if they have to lie.
And nowadays, dairy gets a really bad rap. It seems like more and more of my friends are giving up dairy because they say it either messes with their skin or their stomach. And it's not only my friends who are giving up dairy. Since 1978, Americans' milk intake has dropped from nearly a cup a day to a little more than half. And 54% of us no longer drink it daily at all. And while I personally don't drink milk, I'm a butter coffee lover. So I'm not 100% against dairy, as I believe that high quality products like grass-fed butter or ghee do provide some healthy benefits.
Yeah, I don't drink milk either. I do put organic grass-fed heavy cream in my coffee sometimes, or I even ask for cream when I drink coffee, like at Starbucks. I get into these bulletproof coffee stages too, like you, Jess, where all I drink is butter coffee. And I also eat low-sugar ice cream made from real cream as a weekly treat, and I eat some other dairy like Kelowna organic grass-fed sour cream, the full-fat yogurt from grass-fed cows, and raw milk cheeses or imported cheeses. I am really particular about my sources, you guys, but I'll look first for the goat and sheep milk cheeses, in that gourmet cheese section at your grocery store. And I do that for a couple of reasons, but goat and sheep milk have a different type of protein in them that's more like what ancient cows or heritage cows used to have. But the protein in most cow's milk today, called A1 casein protein, that protein is much more inflammatory in the body and brain and more addicting and harder to digest. And that's actually how I learned about this in the first place. When I first discovered I was sensitive to gluten, I wanted to get rid of my GI symptoms right away. And removing gluten from my diet almost got me there. I was feeling a lot better, but I'd still have these like random symptoms, these random GI symptoms I couldn't figure out. And then I learned that casein, the proteins in milk, especially today, can trick our immune system into thinking it's actually a gluten molecule that you're sensitive to because the molecules are so similar. It's something called molecular mimicry. So a lot of people actually have to go dairy-free or casein-free for a while if they have a gluten intolerance like I do. Then, once we heal our leaky gut from removing all the foods that are aggravating it and slowly healing, we can reintroduce dairy and see if it works for us. And it did, because I'm not lactose intolerant. I had to just be careful with casein until my body healed my gut. And a good way to reintroduce it is starting with sheep's or goat milk products instead, because they're so much easier to digest because they have that different type of protein. And that's what I did. Luckily, now I don't have any symptoms at all from eating any kind of dairy, but I still choose goat or sheep's milk cheeses and sheep and goat milk products because I believe that they are so much better for our bodies. How strict are you, Jess? Do you eat cheese?
I am on the same page as you. I'm all about quality dairy. I do like cheese. I like goat cheese. I really like goat cheese on a beet salad, actually. But
Me too.
I kind of notice myself, like, the more dairy I consume, the more I crave it. It's almost like that with, like, sugar, too. I don't know why. It's just the more I eat of it, the more I crave it. But I really do try to hold back and just go for things like butter and ghee and full-fat yogurt occasionally, just because I personally notice that I have really bad rosacea that flares up when I do dairy. But that's not to say that, the person next to me can't consume it and, not experience those symptoms. But, with all that being said, I think it's really important to dive into some research to just sort through the myths and the hype on both sides of the dairy divide. And you've likely heard that dairy makes you gain weight and it also leads to heart disease. Well, Americans drink 58% less whole milk than we did in 1978, and that's all thanks to our national fat phobia. So saturated fat became this public enemy number one after scientists concluded that it increased our risk of heart disease, and not to mention diabetes and stroke and cancer. And the dairy industry loaded grocery stores with low-fat and fat-free milk, cheese, yogurt, and ice cream. And unfortunately, the low-fat diet craze backfired. So we cut fat, but we replaced it with refined sugars, synthetic vitamins, and artificial flavors. And research published in the British Medical Journal in 1996 showed that low-fat dieters did not reduce the risk of heart disease.
Yeah, these are really good points to bring up. I learned about this meta-analysis that was published in the Annals of Internal Medicine in 2014, where they reviewed 72 seriously rigorous studies, you guys, all on dietary fat and heart disease. And they concluded that saturated fat and total fat consumption have little effect on heart disease. Actually, they found that one of the saturated fatty acids in dairy specifically actually lowers cardiovascular disease risk. And many other studies have shown that the fats in dairy help protect against heart disease and even some cancers. I know some audience members are gasping here because we've all heard that dairy causes cancer, especially if you fell for all of the information in the popular China study. You want to learn more about that? Go to deniseminger.com, where she debunks the China study, you guys. But it's true. The CLA, or conjugated linoleic acid, found in grass-fed butter, full-fat dairy, and ghee, or any saturated dairy fat from grass-fed cows, these fatty acids help prevent cancer and heart disease. Jessica's going to teach us more about that in a little bit. But when we remove the fat from dairy, it doesn't satisfy us. It actually triggers overeating. Studies show time and time again that people who drink low-fat milk, whether it's children or adults, gain more weight than those who drink full fat. Low-fat and non-fat milk have higher lactose content than whole milk does. And Chris Kresser, my favorite functional medicine practitioner and mythbuster, says, I do not recommend consuming reduced fat milk products for any reason. This goes for yogurts, cheeses, and other dairy products as well. If you must have milk and dairy, go for whole.
Amen.
And even Dr. Mark Hyman, who you'll hear me quote a lot, Dr. Hyman he calls himself a pegan, a paleo vegan, and he does not consume any dairy, but he still gives the same recommendation that it should be whole milk from clean sources and not reduced fat dairy. So that's important to learn here.
I love that. I think the moral of the story is that fat does not make you fat like we thought it did in the 80s and 90s. And natural fats actually help keep you very satisfied and energized. You know, when I do eat dairy, I always choose full-fat plain Greek yogurt. And I also choose full-fat cheese, and I'll just use a little bit less. Feta, for example, is super flavorful, so a little bit is going to go a long way. And speaking of cheese, I really do tell my clients that, to think of it as a condiment, it's really a perfect vehicle to eating more veggies. So if you put Parmesan on your broccoli, I guarantee you will eat more of it. Right? Next, you've likely heard that dairy, it makes your skin break out. And personally, when I eat a lot of dairy, I do notice that my rosacea flares up. I think I mentioned that earlier, but dairy products and foods with this high glycemic index, they are the leading causes of acne. And according to a review published in the 2013 issue of the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, that is stated true, that these dairy products are leading causes of acne. And researchers examined the link between acne and diet and found that certain products, especially cow's milk, produce and stimulate hormones linked with acne. So this study supports previous findings from the Harvard School of Public Health and lots of other studies linking dairy and acne as well.
Yeah, like a decade ago, I was an esthetician, someone who takes care of people's skin. And I was trained in Ayurvedic skincare. So I learned to look for signs of food sensitivities in the skin, and dairy was always the first for us to recommend removing in order to get rid of breakouts and redness. So it is true. It's got a long history linking to skin disorders.
Honestly, I think you told me that you were an esthetician in the past, but I don't know why. I must have forgot. And when you just said that, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. That's so cool. I feel like you've had so many different cool jobs.
Thanks.
Okay, listeners. So you've likely heard that there are a lot of hormones in milk. And when it comes to non-organic milk, this is definitely true. In addition to the natural hormones and growth factors produced within a cow's body, milk contains synthetic hormones such as recombinant bovine growth hormone, RBGH, which is commonly used in cows to increase the production of milk. And once introduced into the human body, these hormones can also affect your normal hormone function.
I definitely believe they do. That's what the science is showing too. Now, even though I just told you that dairy can protect us from cancer, there are also many ways that dairy can promote cancer, especially cheap dairy. I'll tell you what I always tell my clients. I say, if you're going to include dairy in your diet or in your kids' diet, this is not the place to save a few bucks. Spend the money to get the cleanest, most natural dairy you can get your hands on. And here's one of the reasons why. Cheap dairy is full of those hormones, and they act like Miracle-Gro for cancer cells. The average glass of milk has 60 different hormones in it. 60! It's crazy. These are natural hormones from the cow's pregnancy and milking phase, but also synthetic growth hormones, just like Jessica explained. But that's why we have to be especially mindful about the dairy that we are giving to our growing children and drinking or consuming as adults when we're even more susceptible to cancer development. And children, they still have these budding hormonal systems, and we don't want to manipulate those in any way through too much access to this terrible dairy. Just know that if you buy organic, that's a step in the right direction. Now, if you buy 100% grass-fed and pasture-raised, even better. especially if you know which farm it comes from. You should really be curious about that. And buying organic also ensures that you're not consuming any antibiotics. The antibiotics come from the farming methods for cows as well. So it's definitely in the milk if we're consuming non-organic milk, you know?
I mean, if an average glass of milk has 60 different hormones in it, I mean, I don't know what else is going to persuade you to go high quality, organic, and grass-fed and pasture-raised.
Jess, I want to cut you off for a sec because this reminds me, I've always told people, we all know that when you are a mother and you first have a baby, if you want to breastfeed, you can't be like drinking alcohol and consuming drugs or pharmaceuticals because you'll pass that to the baby through your milk. So I like to remind people of that because, of course, whatever drugs they're giving to the cows, that's getting passed through the milk to us and our children that drink it. So, you know, that's really important why organic is so critical here.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, you guys, so I have another myth for you. I think you likely heard that dairy promotes bone health, but it actually makes you more likely to have osteoporosis. So it sounds pretty counterintuitive. I know the dairy industry has done an excellent job of equating milk with strong bones and preventing osteoporosis, but the research doesn't back it up. So high cow's milk intake is associated with increased risk of bone fractures, according to a recent study in the British Medical Journal. And among women, those who consumed 3 or more glasses of milk a day had a 60% increased risk of developing a hip fracture and a 16% increased risk for developing any bone fracture. And studies also indicate that when it comes to preventing osteoporosis, milk can actually increase women's risks of getting the disease. So a Harvard Nurses Health study, which followed more than 72,000 women for 18 years, showed no protective effect of increased milk consumption on fracture risk. And instead of promoting bone health, animal protein in dairy products can actually have a calcium leaking effect. And you should, of course, get enough calcium, but you're much better getting it from, a dairy-free source that's not going to carry all the risk. On average, we absorb just 30% of the calcium found in milk, and yogurt, and cheese, but we actually absorb twice the amount of calcium if we eat veggies like kale and broccoli and bok choy and spinach and lots of other plant-based foods that are really good for you in lots of other ways too.
Yes, and I learned that sesame seeds and canned sardines are really great sources of calcium too. But, just hearing you talk about this, Jess, reminds me of a myth that I fell for, and it gets really confusing. In fact, it sounds like it's kind of intertwined with some of the advice that you were just giving. And when I first started learning about dairy, I believed it too. And I was even teaching it in my wellness workshops and felt really bad when I learned a little bit more about it. You'll see all over the internet, in the vegan world and the paleo worlds, that consuming dairy causes a calcium deficit because your body tries to compensate for the acid formation that occurs when you digest cheap dairy. Now, the rumor says that your body compensates by leaching calcium from your bones and excreting it, but that's not really true. Your body doesn't compensate for the acidic levels in that way. It's going to absorb more calcium from the food if needed to neutralize that acid. And it's all like eloquently handled by the kidneys and the digestive system. It doesn't leach it from your bones. Now, we don't absorb that much from calcium, so I do agree, Jess, that it's great to have it from from dairy. Sorry, we don't absorb that much calcium from dairy. So I do agree getting it from vegetables and sardines and sesame seeds and some different types of seafood, I really think is a good idea. Diversity is so huge. But don't worry, you're probably not going to get osteoporosis from consuming dairy. All of those studies are all observational studies. They're really like, when people drink more milk, they are more likely to get osteoporosis, but we don't know other factors in their life, what other things in their diet are persuading that together. But you're probably not going to prevent osteoporosis with dairy either, like the dairy industry has been trying to get us to believe.
Exactly. So now let's shine some light on the benefits of dairy. In general, full-fat dairy products from cows eating grass, like grass-fed butter, it's a great source of CLA. And Marisa already mentioned CLA. So grass-fed butter, it contains 5 times more conjugated linoleic acid than butter from grain-fed cows. And CLA is a beneficial fatty acid linked to fighting cancer and preventing bone loss and just helping your body build muscle rather than store fat. And its anti-inflammatory properties actually help it support nearly every system in your body, and it's going to provide protection from chronic inflammatory disease.
Yep, and that CLA mimics the effects of man-made diabetes drugs even, helping to increase insulin sensitivity. So CLA is studied for that, for its ability to help diabetics. It's also studied for its ability to help lower blood pressure and your dangerous cholesterol markers, and also reduce your appetite. And that's why full fat and grass-fed dairy are so important. They really do make you feel more satisfied. CLA is a fatty acid, and the fatty acids completely change when an animal is fed a typical grain-based diet. That's the kind you're drinking when you buy cheap milk and cheap cheese. That's not what cows are meant to eat. They're not meant to eat corn and grains and whatever they're feeding them in the feedlots. They're meant to eat grass. And from them eating those rich green grasses and breaking it down in their rumens, their extra stomachs, their meat and their milk stores all of those essential fatty acids for us to consume. And we can't get them from the plants ourselves because we don't have those special stomachs to break down the plant foods. That's why the circle of life makes so much sense. We need them in order to access those nutrients.
Yes. So another benefit that we have to talk about more are probiotics, or live microorganisms found in most yogurt and kefir. So these cultures and probiotics are so crucial for digestive health, and while you may not want to think about all this bacteria traveling through your intestinal tract, I promise that these guys are your friends. Probiotics, they're going to aid in digestion, they're going to boost your immune system, and they're considered to be promising treatments for things like anxiety and depression, considering our gut is our second brain.
That's right. I mean, those probiotics are helping break down the yogurt. So even if you're sensitive, a lot of times you can tolerate the full fat yogurt because the bacteria really help us do the job. Your yogurt should be full fat, you guys, and plain. That means unsweetened. Add your own raw honey or fruit or both if you'd like. And it should always be grass-fed or at least organic. And did you know that even cheese is a cultured food? Something cultured means it basically has those probiotic bacteria added to it to help ferment it. And it has beneficial microbes in it, which are the main reason that the milk turns into the cheese in the cheese making process. The bacteria start to break down the lactose and the different substances that we're sensitive to in dairy, changing the composition entirely and turning it into cheese that's alive and easier for us to digest. Even people with a lactose intolerance can enjoy hard, extra-aged cheeses. But more on that next week when we cover more about intolerances and all the tips that we have for you. But for now, just know that not all cheese is created equal. I want you looking for artisanal cheeses, imported cheeses like Manchego, which is an aged sheep milk cheese, Pecorino Romano, Italian cheese, and some feta cheeses. All of these extra bonus points if you're sure they're made from sheep's milk. And I recommend real Parmigiano Reggiano. That's like Parmesan. Parmesan is its American imitation. Parmigiano Reggiano and Grana Padano is the more affordable version of that real Parmesan. Those are made from raw, unpasteurized milk, the old-fashioned way. And they're a lot easier on your digestive system, much more healthy than American Parmesan. Now, the less processed the cheese is, the better. Extra points if the sticker says unpasteurized milk or raw milk, because there are even more enzymes there, more benefits. It's easier to digest because the milk is unpasteurized to begin with. And imported aged cheeses like Gruyere, goat cheese, and sheep's cheese are all really ideal options. And that means you guys are doing the right thing.
So the bottom line is that grass-fed, full-fat dairy products provide essential nutrients that can lead to better digestive functions and reduced inflammation. And a healthy portion of cheese or yogurt, it's going to provide this great punch of protein, live active cultures, and CLAs. And it could be such a fun addition to your diet. I mean, think cheese on your pizza and butter or cream in your coffee. I think what a sad life it would be if we could not enjoy those things. And speaking of butter, I actually just had a girlfriend DM me on Instagram, and she used to be vegan, but now she's incorporating things like collagen and eggs into her diet, and she's considering adding some dairy products too. So she sent me a message saying, "Tell me about ghee." And here was my answer. So ghee is actually considered to be butter's clarified cousin. Ghee starts out as butter, but then it's clarified, meaning that it's boiled to evaporate the water, and then the milk solids are actually going to be strained out. And you can make ghee yourself, or you can buy it in most grocery stores or even online. So ghee, it's going to be the butter minus water and milk solids, aka butterfat.
Yes, that's right. Ghee is butterfat. It's literally like if you like to cook with oil, then you like cooking with ghee because it's just the fatty oil from the butter. And everyone's so crazy about it now because it can handle high cooking temperatures. And because it's super low in casein or lactose, which means that people with dairy sensitivities can usually tolerate ghee just fine. How cool is that? And you can learn how to make your own ghee by just going to my blog at mylongevitykitchen.com. Just type the word ghee, that's Ghee, in the search box. And the post that comes up is my tutorial with photos on how to make your own ghee. It's easy and way cheaper than buying pre-made ghee.
Yes, I actually saw that post of yours, and you give such a simple explanation about how to make ghee that it makes me never want to purchase it and just make it on my own. But it's really important to know that butter and its cousin ghee are not bad for you, like you might have heard. So recent studies suggest that butter in moderation isn't evil like we once thought, and in fact, they actually contain really healthy compounds such as butyrate and CLAs. So Marissa and I kind of explained what CLAs are already, but we really want to spotlight butyrate. You can actually boost weight loss with butyrate. So one of the most magical, beneficial compounds in butter is the metabolism-boosting fatty acid butyrate. And in studies, it's been shown to improve insulin sensitivity, reduce cholesterol and blood sugar, and it's going to increase fat burning and mitochondrial activity. So mitochondria power every cell in your body, and they turn the foods that you eat into cellular energy that keeps your body running. So basically, mitochondria helps you feel, look, and just perform your best. And butyrate is also linked to reduced inflammation and supporting healthy bacteria in your gut. And like Marissa said, it's really important to choose grass-fed versions. So when cows eat mostly grass rather than grain, their meat, milk, and products made from the milk, like the yogurt, butter, and ghee, they actually have better nutrition, such as more healthy omega-3 fats and those CLAs that we've been talking about.
I'm totally on board with what you're saying, girl. But I'm thinking our listeners might be wondering, butter versus ghee. Which one is better?
You know, I would have to say that ghee is a little bit better than butter because it's shelf stable. There's no refrigeration needed even after opening, so it's always easily spreadable. And once open, you could use it for 3 months.
Ghee definitely lasts months with no refrigeration. I leave my butter out, though, in a butter dish, too, like the olden days. I got really excited when I found out you could do that. But I don't think that my butter in the butter dish would last more than a month. I'm not sure. I've never tried because I use it. That's why I keep it out. I like to keep it out because if the butter's cold and I'm trying to make bulletproof coffee or butter coffee, the cold butter just cools my coffee down too much. So I like to keep it at room temperature. If you're a kind of person that spreads butter on anything, like I hope you're not just eating toast, but if you eat like paleo banana bread, it's really awesome to spread room temperature butter. on your paleo banana bread. So it's nice when we leave it out for that too.
Oh, now you have me craving some paleo banana bread. Okay, but that's a really good idea. And I also like ghee because I think it's more flavorful. So ghee tastes kind of butterier than butter, so you can use about half the amount without sacrificing flavor.
Ooh, I don't know if I agree that ghee tastes butterier than butter, but they both have great flavor and they're both different flavors. Everyone's just going to have to try both and see for themselves because I like them both.
I agree. But ghee, I would say, also is really great at high temperatures, and this is the point that makes me most pumped about ghee. I think butter can only be heated to 350 degrees, but ghee can safely be used in really high heat cooking, so about 485 degrees Fahrenheit. And butter really doesn't have much lactose or milk protein, but ghee has just about none, which is good for people sensitive to them. So you can reach for ghee when you're roasting potatoes or sauteing veggies or boiling frittatas or grilling meat or just pan frying salmon cakes. I think the takeaway for me is that I'm just a huge fan of blending butter and ghee into my morning coffee and occasionally eating full-fat Greek yogurt with berries as a snack and putting cheese on veggies as a vehicle to eat more of them.
I mean, let's face it, you guys. Dairy is stinking delicious, right? Most people love the taste of dairy products like butter, cheese, yogurt. All of these things are common ingredients in so many different types of cuisine everywhere. I mean, dairy's been prized in cultures throughout history and in people all over the world today because in its more natural forms, it's just full of nutrients. Jess and I call that nutrient dense. And these nutrients are the kinds that we can't really get from very many other foods. And populations that consume natural dairy typically have more robust health throughout history.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, I'm not one to drink cow's milk on the daily. I prefer alternatives like almond milk, cashew milk, and I'm aware of signs when I eat way too much of it, like my rosacea flares up. I've mentioned that, but I am not against dairy, and I do believe that quality matters. So you just always want to go for full-fat versions and go for grass-fed organic as well.
You know, maybe before we wrap up, Jess, I'd just like to tell our listeners that I do believe that dairy production is just horrible for the environment, especially the way it's done in America today, where we're one of the top dairy producers. I mean, the dairy industry wants us to believe that their cows are happily grazing on pastures, but for the most part, that's just a big marketing facade. And dairy cows are often denied outdoor access their entire lives, and they live in these tiny, filthy, disgusting quarters, constantly pumped for milk and denied time, denied feeding their baby calves. And this is another reason to buy your dairy from a small farm and a brand that is animal welfare approved or certified humane.
Yes, I could not agree more. So, do you guys eat dairy? Have you ever eliminated it and felt better? Send us a Facebook message to start the conversation. And you can find us at the Foundation of Wellness podcast on both Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, we're new to Instagram. It's kind of exciting. Well, I want everyone to join us next week for all the details on why we have so many dairy sensitivities today and what we can all do about it. Right?
Yeah, and as always, thank you so much for listening. Leave us a review on iTunes. We love to see your comments. Bye.
Bye. Okay.
So cute how you said bye.